So kind of related to health and climate change. This is the climate and environment stuff is real important to me, but also just science itself. Before going into the church, I was an engineer, and science is real important to making decisions scientifically. So for you, what is the role of science in governance? And what could be the role of scientists? And we include physicians and people working in medicine under the scientist rubric. And what is the government's role in science? How do
the scientific endeavor is a communal work. Scientists can't do science by themselves. Most important scientific work is supported by public funding. And so governance being the way that we organize ourselves to collaborate as a human society, human community has a very direct participation in that scientific work to support further research, and to do that through our academic centers. NIH, for example, is another one. And we do that currently, but as far as I'm concerned, expanding that endeavor is nothing but useful for us as human beings to be more capable of understanding the world we live in and using the skills that we have by our functioning central nervous system to make good decisions. We're also emotional, very, very emotional creatures. And a teacher of mine in high school, when I was trying to explain to him a good decision, follow the rational approach to make a solution. And he said, what is this rationality you're talking about? People make decisions based upon their emotions. And then when they get in trouble, they use their rationing ability to try to get themselves out of it. And so I would say that is true in our political endeavors, that we spend a lot of energy living in our emotional world and trying to push for individual or partisan or specialized advantage by using those emotional connections, fear being the most readily available, that obscures our tendency to want to look for evidence that's scientifically based, because it doesn't get manipulated. So we just want to ignore scientific evidence because it doesn't allow me to mold it and shift it into my strategies that are fear-based control of other people. So, social engineering as an example, fancy social marketing. Fear is such an easy one for us to grab onto, and we see it in all types of social media or social engineering schemes. In politics, we see it in the scary ads as sort of a fundamental first go-to, make the other guy look scarier than me. And why is this such a crucial issue? Is because all creatures with central nervous systems have a fear response, fight, flight, or freeze. And certainly it's deep within our brain to do that. And so it's easy to snag it, and it's easy to get us to, to be manipulated. And it makes it less able for us to do good caring for ourselves as a community. But it does allow for individuals to be snagged into participating in decisions that ultimately end up being disadvantageous to them.
So how could you use your position as a representative, as a bully pulpit, to champion science?
I think that what I would love to do as a representative is to search for avenues to have better communication with my constituents. I think that a lot of times what we see right now is that our people who are hired in Washington, D.C. are striving to get rehired in 2 years. They get money to do that operation. They're carrying water for the people that give them that money. And so they're really not serving their people. They're preparing for their next campaign, and they're carrying money for the people who are going to finance it for them. And we, in our local lives, end up hearing from our representatives as a way of managing our expectations, to sort of like influence what we can hope for or not hope for, and that's just not realistic. So, to make us feel okay, but at the same time to really not care or to listen, other than to get a little bit more edge on how I can manipulate the expectations of my constituents, because the real problem is, how am I going to solve the problems for the people that are paying for my campaign? If I was a representative, I would like to primarily find avenues to change that model and to become a much better capable person of appreciating the perspective of those who have sent me to represent them. And to use means of communication to do that, to receive information, rather than to impose upon them a viewpoint that needs to be imposed upon them because that's what Washington, D.C. needs. And so I need to be able to listen and to be a catalyst and a focus for true exchange of shared values and hopes and dreams for our community. I think in the middle of that, we would find a lot of interest in scientific truthfulness because it's been so useful to us. I think in that kind of conversation, it would not be hard for people to long for scientific information. It wouldn't be something that I would have to bully them into, but it'd be something that we would all look for because we're trying to honestly talk with one another.
Yeah, one reason I asked the question is because we definitely have some politicians, including our president now, who tend to be kind of anti-science. I mean, they like the science of cell phones and SpaceX and some other things, but the science of, say, COVID-19, or the science of evolution, or the science of climate change, they dismiss that very easily. And I would like to see more representatives more vocal about the importance of science and of I hate to use the word trust, because it's not about even trusting it so much, just recognizing that it's the way things are.
It's useful.
and that it's useful. Yes, that's a good.
Well, it's the only thing I could use. When I'm caring for a sick person, and particularly a child, I've seen this happen where the issue was, how do I try to persuade the parents of that child that everything's okay, because then they'll like me, because I'm a good physician. I've consoled them into believing that everything is okay. And they're hoping that it's going to be. Whereas, me, when I was serving in that role, I would be frightened, and I couldn't falsely display and everything's going to be okay unless I could only offer the alternative avenues that I could hope for with a scientific basis. And so, do we just want to manipulate our perceptions? If we want to do that, well, then we can live in a make-believe world, and it might work out for us, and people will be happy because you predicted it. But then a lot of times it's not going to, and we could have done better if we had prepared for the alternative reality that we didn't want to look at.
So a willingness to go with the truth,
take the
even
risk.
if it's hard.
Take the risk.
Yeah.
Take the risk.
Yeah, I've found people, I think, appreciate truthfulness. If it's going to be really difficult to get through something like COVID-19, just say this is going to be difficult and it's going to suck.